to the F3 podcast, where we discuss all things that pertain to faith, family, and finances. And remember, no subject is off limits. We are your hosts today. I am Dr. Lionel M. Blair Sr., and I'm sitting next to the glorious, the wonderful, the radiant. Look how radiant she is.
Don't start.
She is the sainted mother herself, Saint Jasmine the First, Dr. Jasmine Blair, my beautiful wife.
Welcome, everybody, to the F3 podcast. Shout out to all of our viewers. It's so good to see you here with us. Listen, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. And remember, no subject is off limits because we will talk about what your pastor wants. So today we're going to jump right into today's topic because there's so much to cover with this one about ministry models outside of the four walls. And for those of you that have been rocking with us for a while, this was actually one of our first episodes. This is something that we believe wholeheartedly. Everybody can't have a church now.
Right, for real.
Everybody can't be the pastor of Evangelist Watermelon First Fellowship. Somebody's going to have to do something else somewhere. It's just not enough room for everybody to have a position in the church. And, the traditional church, as they call it, it's a model that's been around for a while and it's been changing for a while. But we have to recognize the more we embrace those that are called to the marketplace, the more we have to accept that there are models of ministry that look different. Now, whether you love it or hate it or feel indifferent about it, we've been experiencing this model, this mandate, this doctrine, if you will, about the whole seven mountain mandate, about, people being in the different mountains of society to bring about transformation. And again, regardless of how you feel about it, there's some truth to it. The fact that God can very well use the people that he's raised up, his prophets, his apostles, pastors, evangelists, and teachers and believers in general in different areas of society to win the lost and to bring about healthy change.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, ministry, I always like to start off with the definition of ministry. Ministry means to serve, right? To serve means to meet a need. So your ministry is according to the need that you meet. Technically, if you have a job, you have a ministry. Because you're meeting a need, right? So we only limit ministry within the church, right? But there are ministries outside of the church. But see, let me ask you this. A lot of you are trying to find your ministry, find your rhythm, right? In ministry, but it could be that your ministry is outside of the four walls. It don't mean you don't go to church or whatever, but your ministry may not be inside there. You don't know what kind of impact you will have on someone that's on the outside, but you're just limiting yourself to the inside. There are a lot of needs out there. There are medical needs. There are um, all kinds of needs, economic needs. You understand? There's all kinds of things you can do out here. Okay. And really what makes it a real authentic ministry is the fact that God has anointed you for it. He's anointed you to do it. And he's placed you in positions of influence so that you can be effective in it. A lot of y'all waiting on your turn to preach, and God is like, no, you let your services preach for him. Let the services you provide preach for him. You understand what I'm saying? And then let that open a door for you to share the gospel. I know someone right now. I mean, they're doing all this kind of stuff for their job and they're traveling. Guess what? They're making impact in people's lives. They're coming across people, and then through their job, mind you, and then subjects, situations happen where it actually is discovered that she's a believer and she's prophetic. So then people start asking her questions about dream interpretation and stuff like that, and then that opens the dialogue, for her to lead them to Jesus or for her to pour into them or whatever the case may be. But see, if she was sitting up in church on Sunday morning every Sunday, she wouldn't be able to reach. Some people you ain't gonna be able to reach unless you get up off of your do nothing and do something. Okay. And along with this, Apostle Jasmine also believes that, along with the seven mountain mandate, that there are other models of gathering, other models of congregating, if you will, that God is allowing to on the scene. Since the pandemic, we see a number of rise in e-churches.
Mm-hmm.
Some people live in dry regions and they don't have the quite the equipment yet to erect something themselves that's going to be effective. So what do? You know, and God has lead people to e-churches.
Right.
You know, you know, um, and this is, some people may say, well, that's a stay-at-home Christian. You need to go to church. Well, what if you are deeply apostolic and prophetic and there's none in your city? Okay,
Mm.
then what? Then what? Well, go in there and give them the fire of God. They're going to put you out. They're going to put you out. And we've seen people waste time and resources going to a church thinking that they're going to introduce the fire of God and stuff like that, and it never happens. They going to put your behind out the church because they're going to think you cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Okay? So, there are, I believe God is resurrecting, or more so pushing even more so, the house church movement. Some people ain't called to large settings. Some people thrive in small settings with a pastor. Okay? I believe that too. Some of y'all, so some of y'all, and see, if you're not delivered from the image of ministry, if you're
Mm.
not delivered from the image of ministry, and I've been talking about that a lot lately, the image of ministry, and how I thank God I'm free from the image of ministry. I don't care what it look like. A lot of y'all are not delivered from the image of ministry, and that's why you keep going to the very same thing that ain't feeding you.
Right.
You know, I believe that God is raising what we call tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Tribes is a group of families in one lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, that's a deeper revelation for another day. But God is, you hear this talk about tribalism is biblical, as long as it don't become, this thing where y'all are superior and everybody else is inferior. Okay, God uses tribes, multiple families within one lineage together. You understand what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? I'm not talking about churches and reformations and all of that kind of stuff. I believe that God is erecting other discipleship models.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't care about the Sunday morning dance. They don't care about they don't care about the choir singing. Just
Mm-hmm.
feed me and teach me. Some of you are so addicted to church that you can't even discern some of the other streams that God flow in, right? You know, and I think too, and some of y'all might get mad at me for saying this, but you should know me by now. I think all of this is a result of placing the priesthood over the kingdom,
Hmm.
because it's all about the church,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if it's all about church, and it's not about the kingdom, recognizing that the church or the priesthood
Mm-hmm.
is an entity established within the kingdom, and it's
Right.
supposed to be an agency for the kingdom, but recognizing the kingdom itself is beyond the church, right? And God's dealings are also in the kingdom. But see, when you start dealing with the kingdom, it deals with things beyond the four walls now, that God may be involved in.
Mm-hmm.
But see, if we're not taught this thing and how it really goes, you're gonna think you out the will of God because you ain't tap dancing every Sunday.
Mm.
And we thank God for all the leaders that have churches and buildings. You still have a place.
Mm-hmm.
You still have a place. But don't look down on people like myself and others, okay, who's a little more free to move around. Okay. Okay. You understand what I'm saying? We need to embrace all models of ministry.
Mm-hmm.
All models of ministry. Because I mean, what about Elijah?
Come on.
This man planted schools of the prophets in different cities, not churches. This man planted prophetic institutions. But see, a lot of us, we don't even know how to do anything like that because we got to make it look like a church. We have to make it look like church. And that's the very thing. Some people are so wounded by church, or they're so done with church. Anything that looks like church, they're not coming to it.
Right.
They're not coming to it. You know, there was a pastor. He decided to, I guess, rent out a cigar lounge and gather the men together so they can have cigars and have real conversations. You know, the church bashed this man, beat this man up, and stuff like that. But according to that man, that event was very, very, very effective.
Now, I think he shouldn't have put the church name on the flyer. He should have just did that.
No, he should have put the church name on there. But, you know, outside of that, you know, see, y'all can't even admire creativity outside of that. Y'all think God can't do? Well, that's compromise, brother. When you got to do stuff like that, you don't got power. Some people, they don't care about your power because they go to the witch doctor up the street. So they see power. Okay, they give sister so and so, okay, some money, and she reading her little crystal ball or her little tarot and sprinkle her little herbs, and they get a check next week. Okay, some people are not impressed with your power unless you can show them. Unless you, number one, can demonstrate that your power is greater. Number two, show them something different.
Right.
But all y'all, you can't see God outside of the four walls. You can't see God outside of Sunday mornings. That's why our bi-weekly in-person services are on Fridays. I'm so glad. And then our digital discipleship is every other Friday online. But guess what? Outside of social media, we have a tribe of people that we disciple.
Now, I want to take this in a different direction because you've talked about a lot of different models of ministry that still fit somewhat into what people would associate with their faith.
Right.
But I want to talk about and shift gears to models of ministry that look nothing like church or church-like. You know, one of the things that we've talked about often about making impact and kind of going back to, whether you call it the Seven Mountain Mandate, whether you call it, you know, being impacting society, however you want to refer to it, we do not live in a box. We live in a world. We go different places. Can you imagine if there was a model of ministry through a chain of grocery stores? Because everybody and their mama got to buy groceries, right?
Right.
So what if it was a setup to, it's a grocery store, but this chain of grocery store, not plastering Jesus everywhere, but the model and the morals is so different that it's something that leads people to Christ.
Right.
You know, a chain of restaurants that is a model of ministry. You know, some of you are teachers. Maybe God has called you in your ministry outside the four walls to start a chain of charter schools to where it's almost like tutoring, where you have these small groups, something that's non-traditional. Maybe it's some form of more affordable one-on-one teaching, a form of private school without the private school prices, to where you can add that extra impact. So when you were talking about creativity, there are models of ministry of fulfilling your assignment of your call that God has given you that aren't even, have nothing to do with the church as an institution, but it is still ministry, serving and meeting the needs of people and meeting them where they're at through the means of things that are everyday essentials and necessities, where they wouldn't even think about meeting Christ on the way to going to get their groceries or going to pay their bills or stopping by the bank or going to the daycare or going to the little league team. Maybe you start your own league of sports. You see what I'm saying? There are multiple ways and multiple models, but we have to get out of the church mindset. And this is very key because we're in a day and age now where there are more and more and more Christian entrepreneurs. So obviously God is speaking and breathing on the idea and trying to get our attention that we need to be in other spaces. We can't reach the lost sitting in the church all day long, or even sitting in church like models. We're going to have to reach the lost by providing service ministry and solutions to where the lost are at.
Come on.
The lost need to get their car fixed. The lost need groceries. Okay. The lost tend to sign their kids up for sports. Well, the lost go get their hair and nails done. What are some other avenues to where you can meet people where they're at without compromising, still upholding the integrity of Jesus Christ, and carry out your assignment?
Yeah.
Your gifts and callings give room for you, but you use those things to carry out your actual assignment, the very purpose that God placed you on this earth. So if you're called to heal the sick, that doesn't mean you need to have a church. You could be called to heal the sick, but be good at doing hair, and you do that through the avenue of owning a salon. Who knows?
Right.
So we have limited, I got a call, I have to be in church.
I gotta preach in the pulpit.
And I've said this multiple times. I look forward to the day to where we show up to a service and nobody's there because everybody is out doing their assignment. Everybody is on their assignment and they can't be there because God has them deployed somewhere.
Right.
That is, some of y'all pastors would be mad you show up to church, not there.
And that's why,
because they're not there to hear you preach.
They're not there to hear you preach. And see that's the downfall of putting more into a building than you do in the people. A lot of you, and nothing wrong with a building, nothing wrong with it. If that's what your commission requires, then do that. But some of you put more into a building than you do into your people. And there's nothing wrong with beautifying the temple.
Right.
Nothing wrong with it. But if you can beautify the temple, but you cannot beautify the people.
Hello.
You are a failure of a leader. I'd rather have a simple building design. If I was to ever get a building, I'd rather have a simple building design, but then put a lot of the resources into building the people. Come on now, building them in their education, investing in their businesses, things like that. You understand what I'm saying? Providing for the needs of my own community first. There's a lot of y'all outreach, but you don't inreach. Okay, you trying to feed the homeless and do all this work in homeless shelters. You got people that's homeless right in your congregation.
Come on,
that is failure. Failure. Anyway, I don't want to get on that.
So when it comes to models of ministry, we've got to look at whose model are we following. This goes into what we've talked about methodology as well. Because again, we are following some unwritten rules that to answer your call and to do ministry, it has to be in a church structure. You can do ministry in multiple forms, but you said something in the beginning, and it's about the appearance of ministry, or what should ministry look like. Many of you have felt the call to go start a business, or to go start a charter school, maybe to start a chain of restaurants, a chain of anything, car washes, but you are so worried about what it would look like to other people. That you won't that you do not want to step out on what you feel the burden and the passion to do, what God has spoken to you. Or some of you, you've even had dreams about how God wants you to carry out ministry, because you're worried about it not looking churchy enough to other people. And the key is, there's a measure of approval from God and man as far as, being called. But as far as the model that you carried out, you don't need man's approval for the model, as long as it doesn't contradict what's in the word. We are going to see in this day and age, many believers finally get delivered from the church circus, as I call it, what they believe is supposed to look like, this ring of confusion and these unwritten rules of do's and don'ts, and people are actually going to carry out the assignment God actually gave them, even though it doesn't look like a church and it's not in a church structure.
Come on.
It's time that we get out of that model. It's time that we get comfortable with what God has actually called us to do. And it's okay if it's not in a building. It's okay if it's not in a pulpit. It's okay if it is something that seems completely normal and natural. It's okay if it's in the form of a necessity. What's more important is that you live a life poured out so that you can hear, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." That's what's the most important thing.
Come on.
Some of you, maybe you're going to write a whole curriculum. Maybe you're going to write a school curriculum. And that's going to be your model of ministry. See, you've boxed yourself into either having a church or having a position in the church, and that's not necessarily your ministry. That's a role or a function for you. So who told you that the four walls was the only place you could fulfill your assignment? Who told you that that was the only place that it would actually be ministry? Who told you this lie? Who led you to believe that? Because that's just not it.
Come on.
You know, the Bible talks about how Paul, in a season, you know, he was doing tent making. That was a business for him. It brought him money, but it was also a form of ministry for him as well. So maybe you're going to do something that in the process of it, you're making money, but it's not necessarily about the money, but it's more so about you meeting the need and being available to the people that you are going to reach in that space. Did you ever consider that? And personal service is one of the ways to do that. You know, there are many people, it's always been a well understood thing. You know, if you have a hairstylist or a barber or somebody who's doing some kind of personal service, there's a deeper connection that ends up growing there. Maybe you're giving them the counsel of the Lord while they're in the barber chair, or while they're in the nail chair, without saying, "Thus saith the Lord." Maybe that's where you're going to be the most effective. And maybe it's time for you to embrace that. Maybe as a teacher or principal or professor, you are going to have the most impact, not only helping them learn, but during those office hours where you're spending one-on-one time with them, letting them come help you grade papers or clean up or straighten up, to impact lives one at a time like that. You end up being an advisor for a school group or a team or something like that, and you can impact that way. Maybe that is how God has called you to actually reach that group of people.
Come on.
But you won't be able to do that if you're so worried about the fact that it does not look churchy. And that's something that you're going to have to get delivered from.
You know, and again, it goes back to the image of ministry. If it don't look churchy, it must not be God. And you don't have to be anti-church to do it. That's the thing. You don't have to be anti-church. It's just that you don't need to limit yourself to just that expression. I really hope we're helping you here.
Come on.
You know, and we're not saying don't go to church. We're not saying don't have a spiritual leader in your life, because I think that if you're going to do any of this, especially if you're not connected to a local church, you need to have some kind of established leadership in your life.
Right.
You need covering. You shouldn't be out here uncovered. But outside of that, listen, you need to embrace this, okay? Because see, a lot of y'all's giftings, okay, is heavily tied into your assignment and your destiny.
Absolutely. So what would you say to the person that's watching this? They've been thinking about stepping out, doing something different, maybe an unusual model of ministry, but they're not really sure what the first steps will be. What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, discover what that is, legalize it, okay, and then get the necessary wisdom on the steps you need to take to start it, and then just do it. Just do it. Some people are waiting on approval, you know, from a man or a woman, and instead of just doing it. Okay, do it, and then allow God to put the pieces together as to who's to be in your life, to help you forward this.
Absolutely. Listen, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the F3 podcast. Tell us down in the comments where you are. Maybe you are somebody that has stepped out to do a different model of ministry and you're living the fruits of it. We want to hear from you in the comments. Join us next time at the same time, same place. Follow us over on IG at King and Queen Blair. Until next time on the F3 podcast. Goodbye.